Do you feel drawn to learn more about witchcraft and the occult but feel lost on where to start? Then welcome to Get In Loser, We're Doing Witchcraft, a podcast all about what it means to be a witch and where to get started on your journey.
Join us as we navigate through various witchy topics and share what we have learned about the craft. So get in, witches, as we talk about the Egyptian deities Ra and Khonsu.
Okay. Egyptian deities. I will say, researching this, I know we've already talked about it, but just so our listeners know, there is so much.
There's so much.
There's so much. And I feel like I bit off a little bit more than I could chew when it comes to because I didn't realize how. I mean, but even with like yours too, like there's just so much.
There's a ton. And then on top of it, just so you guys know, there are so many ways that people pronounce these that I'm not 100% sure which one is right. So at least on my half, I'm going to be pronouncing it in what I felt was right in all of the pronunciations that I found, because yikes, that was a rough one. And I was like, why are you saying it this way and you're saying it this way? And then this one's not even saying it anywhere close to those.
Right. Yeah.
There was no like commonality in pronunciation.
No, there's not. And then even like spellings and stuff. And I'm just like, okay, but is this like Ra or is this Re? Or like, do I say it the same way, even though it's like spelled differently? And then
you try to Google it and they're like, it's Ra, it's Re, it's Re, it's Ra. And you're like,
exactly.
I have no idea.
Yeah. I like was Googling both because there was like more information on one than the other. And then it was just a mess. And then some of the things I would Google search, like how to pronounce, there was no pronunciation. And I'm like, awesome. Okay. So we'll
love
see
this
how it
journey
goes.
for me.
Yeah.
So look, we say it a lot. We do our best.
We do. And I feel like I can speak for both of us on this. And since we do not know that much about Egyptian deities, so this was like a learning project for us both. So I loved it. It was great, but also a lot.
A lot. And at least for mine, because, Marvel uses a lot of lore and mythology in their comics, in their movies, in their shows. Khonsu was actually used for Moon Knight. So all of the information, like on the first page of Google, is all the Marvel version of this deity. So that was
to be very
specific
and like read through everything. It's like, oh, is this the Egyptian like backstory,
it was like
or is this the Marvel backstory?
4 articles was a non-Marvel article.
Nice.
It was great.
It's really funny. Okay, so kicking it off, I'm going to talk about Ra, or sometimes known as Re or Pra. I will probably just use Ra throughout. I think that's what I did in my notes, just because it sounded better. I'm not sure which one is like actually correct or if it's all just interchangeable, but I'm assuming it's Ra just because in a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about, like his name is linked with other deities or gods and kings and so so we're just going to do Ra.
I even came across parts that he was linked with Khonsu, as they were seen as like not twins, but they were like the same in that one. I don't know 100% because this is just coming from what I found, but they said that he was the same as Ra in the sense that like in the mornings when the sun was rising, he was a young boy. And then like as it set, I'm doing hand motions too.
Motions.
Yeah. So as the moon or the sun set and the moon would rise, then he was like the adult version of himself. And they said that
Yeah,
was like a same aspect to Ra. And I was like, this is really interesting.
that is. And what's crazy about all this is like, again, and this has happened before whenever we've done deity work or
Mhm.
deity stuff on the podcast, where like we'll both research something completely different and then it all ties back together.
Yeah, we end up with like basically the same deity with a different name.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's really interesting to know because I
Yeah.
don't know anything about Khonsu. So I'm excited to
Well,
learn.
I came in this as, and we've talked about this a lot, we're both pop culture nerds. I'm a huge Marvel nerd. I came into this being like, I really like the Moon Knight comics. I want to learn more about this deity.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
So,
But all right, so Ra was worshipped from the time of the Old Kingdom of Egypt, and I honestly meant to look this up because I don't know what that little C means.
circa.
Circa.
Mm.
I am such an idiot. I thought it was like, because you know how like BC is like before, was it before
Yeah.
Christianity or something like that? I thought it was
Yeah.
like
So
something like that.
a lot of times it'll also be like C, the date, and then BC. So it's like circa, like around
Oh my
this
God,
time
I
BC.
knew what circa was. I am such a fucking idiot. Wow. Okay. So circa 2613 to 2181. So for almost 2000 years he was worshipped until he was unfortunately eclipsed by Christianity as
Womp womp.
everything great and awesome in our society is.
Yeah.
He was known as the king of all deities and the father of all creation. And because of this, I will refer to him as he throughout this. When I started researching, I was going to use like gender neutral pronouns when discussing Ra, but every article, everything that I found refers to him as a he. So
Mm-hmm.
even though he's like a god, he's like I said, the father of all creation, he is known as a he in everything that I've read. So that's how I will be referring to him. He is the patron of the sun, heaven, kingship, power, and light. And he could also be the physical sun itself as well as the day. Ancient Egyptians were agricultural and they lived in the desert. So, of course, the sun or Ra was an integral part of their lives and he guided their thoughts and their actions. And so, like, I mean, he was a huge part of ancient Egyptian lives. He was the source of right and the justice in the cosmos as well. And I will talk a little bit more about that like a little bit later. But so he possessed many literal forms, but also expressed differently when combined with other deities, and over time he merged with others. And so this was a very confusing thing for me to research because there was a
Yeah.
lot. So a couple of examples of this is Amun Ra. When associated with Amun, a great unknowable creator deity, he was referred to as Amun Ra. And the representation here was that of the raw universal power of the sun. And this is also known as like the noonday sun. And so like back like as you were saying at the beginning of this episode, like, and again, this is something that I will discuss, I think pretty soon after this. I can't remember where it is in my notes, but because he was known to be like the sun, the power of the sun, and he harnessed those capabilities, he would make his way through the sky on like a barge. And so whenever it was a noonday sun, that was known as Amun Ra. And then another one is Ra Harakti, and I tried looking this up, wasn't sure how to pronounce it. So
Look, we're just going with our guts on these.
exactly, yeah. So whenever Ra was associated with Horus, that was its name, Ra Harakti. Horus represented Ra in the physical form as the pharaoh in Egypt, and it was also known as the morning sun. And then the last example that I'm going to put in here is Autumn Ra. This is when Ra is associated with the primal life giving energy. And this is also known as the evening sun. But he was also known as being able to take the form of his daughters, Sekhmet and Hathor. So there's that too. He can be like associated and merged with so many different deities in the whole Egyptian pantheon. And it's just a lot. There were so many. So again, as I said, he's believed to travel across the sky on his solar barge. And through the night, he would pass through the underworld. And in order to be born again into the new day, and for the sun to be born again in the new day, he had to defeat the evil serpent Apophis. Apophis, not sure there on the pronunciation. Apophis, also known as Apep, wanted to prevent the sun from rising and wanted to destroy life on Earth. So, I mean, could you imagine like every night, like you have to go and defeat this fucking snake again?
Who
like,
is it that pushes the boulder up the hill just for it to roll down the other side?
Oh, I don't even
that was
know.
Like,
is it one
Greek?
with like, is it the guy where he's holding it on to, no, that's not it. It's not the guy that's holding it on his neck, right?
Maybe. I don't know. It was like his eternal punishment was he had to get the boulder up to the top, and then it like obviously would roll down the other side. And so he had to go back over and get it back up to the top and then it would roll down the other side.
That is a stupid punishment. I hate it.
It's the same thing. He's going under. He's got to do this battle and then he can rise again.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm doing all this for you fucking humans.
Let me Google this man while you continue.
He is also always depicted as a falcon-headed male with the solar disk above his head. And as the creator god, it was also believed that he rose from the ocean of chaos on the primordial hill and created the 8 other gods and the world. And because of this, he's known as a self-created one.
It's Sisyphus, and he is Greek, and he rolls this boulder up the hill and back down and up the hill and back down. I knew it was Greek. I didn't know his name.
I've heard of the name before.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I know of the name, but I didn't know that story.
That was my last interruption for the next 3 minutes. I can't promise past that.
It's, you know what? It is what
I'm
it is.
fueled by cookies today. So cookies
and pizza, as you should be. Let's see here. So from the 4th dynasty, the kings held the title of son of Re. And again, this is interchangeable with Ra. And Re became part of the name that was adopted at Ascension. So kings began being known as like the son of Ra or the son of the sun. Like it just crazy meta, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm like, it's just a lot. So the earliest depictions of Ra, it was first documented in the pyramid texts. And this is circa 2400 to 2300 BCE, which are the oldest religious works in the world. And it was inscribed like on sarcophagi walls of the tombs in Saqqara. I did look up that pronunciation. I'm pretty sure I pronounced that correctly.
That sounds right. I think so. I think I've heard it.
Yeah. So. I was like, okay, I got this one at the very least.
This is the only correct pronunciation in this entire episode. You guys are welcome.
You're welcome. And so how he was described in these texts on these walls and on the sarcophagi was that he would gather the soul of the king and take him to the paradise of the field of reeds in his golden barge. And he wasn't just depicted as a supreme ruler or as like the person to bring the soul to the afterlife, but he was viewed as the embodiment of divine order and balance. And so I thought that was pretty interesting and kind of cool, but also like a different way to look at it, because whenever you think of like other pantheons, you like there is a specific person that takes the souls to the afterlife. There's a specific person that like judges you. Like it's a little bit different. So Ra is enabled through the power of Heka, which is the god of magic and the name for magic itself. And so magic, according to ancient Egyptians, was a divine force that allowed all to be and allows for transformation. So Ra, being the first god, created Heka, or magic, harnessed it, then created the god Heka, who then maintained and controlled the magic after that. But he created it all. So because of this, he's known as one of the most important gods outside of his association with the sun, but also because of his influence on the development of other deities. Amen and Horus, as I mentioned earlier, being two that developed through Ra's influence. And in some creation stories, the names are interchanged between Ra, Amen, and Ra and Horus. So again, a whole other subset of like information. So Richard A. Wilkins was a scholar, and he says that in order to actually discuss Ra and understand him, you need to address his roles and functions because the scope of his power was so far-reaching. And so there's 4 different, I think, subsets. The first one is Ra in the heavens. So he once ruled over the earth and ascended to heaven. He grew tired of the humans because there was a plot to overthrow Ra. So he called like a council of other gods, and they were basically like smite the humans. So he calls on the Eye of Ra, aka Hathor, which is a goddess that does Ra's bidding. he then releases her on the humans and she kills thousands of humans before Ra's like, oh shit, please stop.
No more.
No more. Yeah, she won't, of course, because she's like so blinded by her wrath. And, they say there's no wrath like a goddess, right? Mm-hmm. So Ra has a ton of beer dyed red thrown onto the fields to look like blood. And Hathor drinks the blood beer and passes out. And when she wakes up, she finally decides, okay, maybe humans aren't so bad after all, and stops killing them.
He just gets her drunk off like red dye 40 beer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like, this doesn't taste like blood, but I don't know what I'm doing.
I don't care.
Death to all.
And then takes a nap. After this, like, he's like, eat a Snickers.
Right, yeah.
You're not yourself when you're hungry.
Literally. After this, Ra is done basically ruling over humans. He's sick of that shit. And he asks the goddess Nut to take him to the heavens, which she does by changing herself into a celestial cow and carrying him to the heavens. And on his way there, he creates the fields of reeds, which is, where all of the like pharaohs and like just people go after they die. And he organizes things and basically allows the humans to maintain the earth with the other gods while he focuses on riding his barge across the sky. He's like, y'all deal with your bullshit. I'm going to deal with these like other things and fight this serpent. That's so much better than dealing with y'all.
Yeah.
So Ra on earth, obviously this relates back to before he left for the heavens, who created all of the laws on earth, Ra in the netherworld. So throughout the day, as I mentioned, Ra would sail across the sky in his barge and then descend to the underworld at night. The sun barge transformed into the evening barge known as the Ship of a Million Souls, and this barge picked up newly arrived and justified dead to bring them to the paradise of the Field of Reeds. And Ra is merged with Osiris here as the judge of the dead, and so then he's known as Ra Osiris. So another name. And then actually, I got this wrong. There's not 4 subsets. There's 5. So there's 2 more after this. So Ra as the creator is the next subset of his power. And so essentially, like I said, he rose from the water of the primordial mound, stood upon it. Then he cut his penis open. And from the drops of blood, he created Hu, which is authority, Sia, which is mine, and then became aware of his own solitude after this. He mated with his own shadow. So there's that, to give birth to Shu, which is the god of the air, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture. So Shu, yeah, right. Like that's a wonderful way to say that he, just jacked off on this hill. But
gives a whole new meaning to go fuck yourself.
Literally. So Shu and Tefnut left to create the world, and they were gone for quite a while. So Ra had the Eye of Ra sent out to find them because he really missed them. And when his children came back home, he was so happy. He cried, and from his tears were born men and women. And realizing that these people had nowhere to live, Shu and Tefnut mated, brother and sister. I'm just going to point that out. And gave birth to Geb, which is earth, and Nut, which is the sky. So that's how the earth was created. And the last aspect of Ra is Ra as the king and the father of the king. And so, like I said, he was worshipped for almost 2,000 years. And the king Userkaf, I tried looking this up and I could not find a pronunciation for this. So don't know. He elevated the cult of Ra to basically like a state religion. And so from there, it just kind of exploded. And he encouraged others to live by Ra's values. And he also was the first to build a sun temple in honor of Ra. And then from there was a lot of other temples and things constructed to worship him. And so that is a little bit of the god Ra.
I love how similar our people are. Like listening to you go through this, I'm like, man, we're gonna be talking about the same things.
No, I can't wait. I mean,
they're not the same, but there's a lot of similarities and it's so interesting. And then with the Egyptian deities, I feel like this is a new aspect for me. Mm-hmm. We've done, like Celtic deities and Germanic deities. We know all the Norse deities with all the Marvel stuff that's out there now. But and not only that, what Vikings, the TV shows, like they're very prominent. at least the names of a lot of them because of these things. I don't know hardly anything about Egyptian deities.
Exactly. Me
and
neither.
then seeing that, like outside, like a Norse deity, right? They're like, this is me, and these are the things that I do. And then you get to these Egyptian deities, they're like, this is me, but this is also me, and this is also me, and this version over here is also me. And we're all the same, but we're different.
Yes, like, and it makes me wonder, like, who, well, first of all, I have a lot of thoughts on like people, like, I think archaeology is awesome and stuff, but like the rush in archaeology in like the early 1900s, like, I really disagree with all that, and like taking things from like those communities and putting them in museums, like, give that shit back, first of all.
Give back. It's not yours.
It's not yours.
Stop opening things. Stop opening tombs.
Exactly.
Stop touching things.
Right. And it's just like, how many, like, could you imagine like being dead, buried in the earth, and then someone dig you up and put you in a museum?
No.
Like, no, thank you. And then did you hear that whole, like, this is kind of like super off topic, but did you hear, like, I think I heard on TikTok that like in the early 1900s too, a bunch of British people like ate pieces of like a mummy or whatever?
Yeah.
Like,
it was like this, it's like a soup, like what decomposed.
There's no way you could not
but
pay
apparently
me money for that.
They were eating it for, I don't remember if it was like health or youth or I don't, it was gross.
Like, what is wrong with you? First of all, put it back in the ground, leave them alone. But also, I wonder who was ever like the first person to like decipher the Rosetta Stone or whatever the fuck, and was like, you know what? This all makes sense now. Like, this guy is this guy who's also this guy, and it all ties back to this guy. And I'm like, I would be sitting there like crying.
How did we get here?
I don't understand. I don't get it. Because reading some of this, I was just like, okay, I think I got it. And then I read something else, and I'm like, I don't understand this at all.
Yeah. I felt that way a lot with this stuff. But again, because I feel like the Egyptian deities are so different from other deities that we've researched or that we know of, or like there's no just like, this is who they are and what they do. There's so many different aspects to them that I was sitting there going, is this the same person? Am I talking about the same person, or am I adding a new deity into this?
Same. Yeah.
Am I going to confuse everyone?
So. Is someone going to come in and be like, actually, you have this completely wrong?
Look, and if we do, please tell us.
Yeah.
We know that sometimes we're dumb.
Yeah. We're doing our best. Thanks.
Gosh. So with that, I am going to be covering Khonsu. And Khonsu was really hard, like I said at the beginning of the episode, because Marvel has used him in the Moon Knight comics and now show that they picked up on Disney Plus, and it's fantastic. If you've never watched it, it's great. If you want to read the comics, highly suggest them. But they have made it very hard for me to find like actual research or mythology or lore around Khonsu that's not on Khonshu of Marvel. So with that, I did want to add, because I found it funny, Bustle did an article, and it was on Marvel's storyline Moon Knight, which includes Khonshu and his schizophrenic or multiple personality disorder host or avatar, whatever you want to call him, where they basically revealed the zodiacs for each of these characters. So Steven is, if you haven't seen it, he's the main host or avatar. He's your main character, and he's the nerdy museum worker. And he was noted to be a knowledgeable and altruistic Virgo. Mark he's another avatar or personality within Steven, and he's an ex-soldier, and he was the calm and controlled during Chaos Capricorn. And then Khonshu was said to be the rebellious, dominating Aries, which I found hilarious. But basically, I only wanted to include this because it really fits all these various aspects that I'm getting ready to talk to you about of Khonshu and his mythology, where he basically will talk to himself, like older versions of himself or younger versions of himself when he's like presented with a problem, and they like figure out how to solve it, or like give each other advice or help each other like solve it. And reading that was the funniest thing. As a Capricorn married to a Virgo, like that is the most like Capricorn Virgo bullshit to do on the planet, right?
Yeah.
Like I was telling you earlier, Sam, like, I don't need your help. I will talk to myself. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And that is like,
please leave me alone. I'm smarter than you.
Like wrapped with a bow. That's him. And so with Khonsu, like he has all these various aspects that fall underneath him, and they're all each like considered different versions of him. But like I said, they can converse with each other as well as like help each other out with different problems. And evidence of this is written in the Bentresh stela that's now displayed in the Louvre Museum. And basically, the text portrays conversations between a statue form. There's a story that I'll talk about later. But basically, Khonshu goes into a statue and he goes to like heal this princess, essentially. Before he does this, he like finds out what's going on. And then he reaches out to a more senior version of him residing in Thebes at the time to present the problem to him and be like, how should I go about this? And he's like, oh, this is what you should do. And then they go like, do the thing. He's just hilarious in that aspect to me. So he's usually depicted as a young man wrapped and posed like a mummy with his arms crossed. He generally wears the sidelock of youth and the curved beard of the gods, and he often wears a headdress that's a full lunar disc that's resting in a crescent moon, and he carries a crook for his role as a protector and a flail for his role as a ruler. He also wears a loose necklace with a crescent-shaped pectoral and counterpoise in the shape of an inverted keyhole. And some of these things I had to look up because I wasn't sure. So a counterpoise is basically a broad collar that you see in like a lot of Egyptian paintings.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And then the sidelock of youth. This was a thick side braid that was an identifying characteristic of the child in ancient Egypt. And it symbolically indicates that the wearer was a legitimate heir of Osiris.
Osiris.
So it's like a really thick, again, I'm doing hand gestures like you guys can see, but it was like a braid that came from one side all the way down the other. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it was like, looking at some of the pictures for it, it looked like almost everything underneath was shaved and it was just this giant braid that came down. So nice. That's what that part was. He occasionally is also depicted carrying a staff that's topped by the waz or the jed, and those represent power and stability. Khonsu was also sometimes depicted as having the head of a falcon, wearing a headdress topped by a lunar symbol. And he's sometimes seen depicted standing on the back of a crocodile, which I don't know why. There was no explanation or what the crocodile was a symbol for, but sometimes he's just like standing on this crocodile. No idea. And then some depictions also associate him with a baboon. These are pretty rare, but they are like, it was like 1 out of every 5 things I read about him was like, sometimes he's a baboon. So I just included it. So while there's many debates around the meaning of his name, the most common are that it means to cross or to travel, since he does represent the moon and the moon travels through the sky. Others translate his name to mean traveler, wanderer, embracer, pathfinder, defender, or navigator, and he was thought to watch over those that traveled at night. And the most obscure one that I came across, and I had to include because it's gross, was that his name meant the royal placenta.
Yeah, I'm going to need them to stop right now.
Yeah, I know. They also didn't explain it. They were just like, anyways, he means the royal placenta. It's and like, next.
Like a life-giving, like, globby thing that comes out of your uterus. Ugh.
Gross. At his core, he is the Egyptian god of the moon and of time, and his history is very complex, and it ties to many different things. He's part of a triad with Amun, the god of air, and Mut, the mother goddess of Thebes. And one of the companions of, I don't know if this was Thoth or Toth, because it was pronounced both ways on Google Translate. So one of those, and he is basically one of the earliest Egyptian gods, and he was also known as the son of Ra, the king of the gods.
Woohoo! Ra.
We've come full circle.
Yeah, we have.
So now I'm going to talk about all of his different aspects, which are basically his different versions of himself. So Khonsu Pa Khered, or Khonsu the child, is the aspect that's known as the first great son of Amun, the son of the goddess Nut, and the aspect of the god Ra. And this is what I was talking about earlier with you, is that like his similarity was believed to be that in the morning he was a child, and then like as the time passed throughout the day, then he was a man. So that's how they like tied them together there. As Khonsu Pakart, he was believed to be both the spring sun and the spring moon, as well as the moon at the beginning of each month, along with the symbol of renewed light of the sun and moon and the source of generation and reproduction. And these aspects linked Khonsu to Horus, Ra, and or Min. As Khonsu Pa-Ir Seker, he was known as Khonsu the Provider. As Khonsu Haseb Ahau, he was known as the decider of the lifespan. And I thought that was kind of interesting because you were talking about with Ra, like how he kind of like judged that essentially. Mm-hmm. Khonsu also had a role in that in his own ways too. As Khonsu, the chronographer, he wears a solar disc on his head and he holds a stylus in his right hand. And then in later periods of time, Osiris and Khonsu were known as the two bulls, and they represented the sun and the moon respectively. And then, of course, because he is a moon god, the moon phases also brought him various versions. So the new moon, he was considered a mighty bull or the mighty bull during the new moon, a neutered bull during the full moon. And then during a crescent moon, he was known as Khonsu Pakart. And this was the personification of the light of the crescent moon. It was believed that when Khonsu caused the crescent moon to shine, women conceived, cattle became fertile, and then this is in all quotes because I didn't know how to write it without it sounding hilarious. So the quote is, "All nostrils and every throat were filled with fresh air." I was like, that is the most random thing. But also every way that I tried to write it, I was like, this sounds ridiculous.
Right. Like we're just going to put the whole ass quote in here.
So here's the whole ass quote. That's what it said. Mythology surrounding Khonsu believed that he was able to influence both the fertility of people and of livestock. And he's even been credited by some as playing a prominent role in the creation of the universe. Khonsu has also been hailed as the god of healing. So he personally healed the pharaoh Ptolemy IV from a mysterious illness, and he earned the name Beloved Khonsu, who protects his majesty and drives away evil spirits. Imagine every time you talk to him, that's what you have to say.
Right. Beloved Khonsu, protects his majesty and drives away evil spirits. Would you like a drink?
I was like, could they make his name any longer?
They should just do like what the military does and has an acronym. So it'd be like BKWP HMADAES.
But then, you have to come up with like a witty word that it like, because that's what they do. Every acronym, they're like, whatever. So
it's and you're
like, I have no idea what that is.
Whipham Adis. Whipham Adamus. That's what you would do.
Oh my gosh. And then this is the story that I was referencing at the beginning. Basically, there's this princess Bekheten, and an Egyptian king prayed to Khonsu to embody a statue and travel to Syria to heal the sick princess, and he agreed to do it. And her sickness was determined to be caused by evil spirits, and basically Khonsu removes them and heals her. So that's like where they tie him to being the god of healing.
I think there were like nickname though after that,
right? No sick nickname from that one. Probably because it was like a child. They were like, look at this crazy person who just healed me. Whereas the pharaoh was like, anyways, the one that healed me who did all these
shall be known
things
from now on as the beloved Khonsu.
And he just like unrolls this long scroll down this and it just has this like real long name. I'm doing all of these gestures like you guys can see me. But we talked about this. We talked about this in the last episode of 2022. You guys are getting a very like, I thrive at this time of the day, so you're getting a good version of me. Maybe a more hot mess version. I don't even know. Okay. It's also said that Khonsu extends his protection to the common people of Egypt, and many Egyptians actually name their children after him. It was believed that he possessed absolute power over evil spirits that infested the earth, the air, the sea, and the sky, that made themselves hostile to man and attacked man's body in the forms of pain, sickness, and disease, while also producing decay, madness, and death. And he was said to, in turn, then make plants grow, fruit ripen, help animals conceive, and was known to the people as the god of love. He's also said to be a great lover of games. This was in multiple different articles about Khonsu, and I just thought it was so funny. Apparently, his favorite board game is Senet, and this is a board game that dates back to 2620 BCE, and it was like one of his favorite games that he often played with Thoth or Toth, however you say it. Yeah. So he just like loved to play games and like specifically loved playing this board game.
That's really cute. Could you imagine? Like, oh yeah, I'm just this god here, gonna play this board game.
I'm just gonna play this board game.
My best friend.
Yeah. Don't bother us for a little bit, okay?
We're busy.
We're unwinding right now. We're trying to relax. So early history of Khonsu, there's not a whole lot. The early Egyptian history for him, basically he was portrayed as a violent and dangerous god, and he is listed as a bloodthirsty deity. Much of his lore was written in the pyramid text or the text on the walls in the sarcophagi of Old Kingdom pyramids. In the cannibal hymn of the pyramid text, he basically helps a deceased king to catch and feed on other gods to absorb their strength. And at this point in time, he was referred to as Khonsu the cannibal. The pyramid text also referred to him specifically as Khonsu who slew the lords, who strangles them for the king and extracts for him what is in their bodies. Because yum.
Gross. Yeah, I don't like that.
No. In the coffin text, specifically in spell 258, he's described as Khonsu who lives on hearts. And then again in spell 310, where it states that he's capable of sending out the rage which burns hearts. And this like darker version, like harsher mythology of the pyramid text is believed to be where Marvel pulls their lore for Moon Knight, for anyone who also loves Marvel comics like me, or the Moon Knight show. So that version of him is the not so nice version, which we see in the show if you've watched it. When the New Kingdom came, there was this shift, and then he was worshipped as a benevolent god and considered to be gentle and compassionate. And in this time, he was often described to as the greatest god of the great gods. In the late New Kingdom, which is somewhere around 1100 BCE, a significant temple was built for Khonsu in Thebes as part of the Temple of Karnak. The temple's main focus was shifted to Khonsu at the time of the Ramesside period, and the temple is actually still in relatively good condition today. It is within this temple that Khonsu is tied to creation through the depiction where Khonsu is described as the great snake that fertilized the cosmic egg and in turn created the world. And there were also cults that followed Khonsu in the New Kingdom in Memphis, Hibis, and Edfu, but the main cult center was in Thebes. And Khonsu plays a great role in their New Year celebration, where they basically march from his temple to the town center where the festivals are held.
Aw.
Yeah.
I like that part.
So it's like the old history for him. There's not a whole lot, and it's like complete opposite of what like New World sees him as. You know, he's this like bloodthirsty, like super dangerous god. And then like in the New World, they're like, he's the greatest god of all gods. We love him so much.
Right. And then, you know, we're going to have all these festivals and things, and he plays board games and like
he loves board games.
Sweet guy.
So what? He ate a few hearts.
Right. No worries.
Yeah. But that's Khonsu.
I love it. Yeah, there is a lot of similarities between Ra and Khonsu, and I really like that. It's just crazy to me. Like, it's always surprising every time we do these, and we're like, oh yeah, we're going to do two completely different things.
Yeah.
And
well, and it's like, it's not like we plan them or look at them. We're like, I'm going to do this. Oh, okay. Well, I'll do this. Like,
yeah, literally.
Having no clue how they're going to work.
Yeah. And then they all tie.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But yeah. Well, yeah. So that is our Egyptian deities episode. Again, if we have anything wrong or we have information that like you want to add to, let us know, because we don't know a lot, like we said, about Egyptian deities. And I mean, it did, like, I am more interested now. Like, I've always been interested, but now I'm like more interested to learn more and find out more about them. But
well, and if there's like deities that you want us to cover in any pantheon, let us know, because we are completely open to researching and learning about them too. So
yeah, absolutely. We are here for it. Like, I'm excited. I think, you know, we should do deities from like all different regions of the world and religions and everything. So I'm here for it.
Yes.
That's it for this episode of Get In Loser, We're Doing Witchcraft. You can find our source material for this episode linked in the show notes. If you love this episode, we would be forever thankful if you leave us a 5-star review on wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you really love the show and want more Get In Loser content, check out our Supercast link provided in the show notes or search the Supercast website for Get In Loser, We're Doing Witchcraft. There you can purchase a membership to our podcast and obtain exclusives like getting episodes early, shoutouts on the show, access to our Ask Me Anything forum, our monthly newsletter, a promo code for merchandise, and more.
You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Get In Witches, or email us at we'redoingwitchcraft@gmail.com. Check us out next week, where we will explore Wicca. Until then, blessed be witches.